Welcome back, guys. So I reviewed the Psycho films, all of them, this past year, I believe, or the year before. And Lieberman and Derek's Horror Corner, two very good friends of mine, are doing their collab together with all the films. And I've already done that, so they asked me to do the ranking video. So this is the only video I'm going to do with them, is the whole ranking of the Psycho franchise, because I didn't rank the films whenever I reviewed them before. And so first off, I'm gonna give the spotlight to Derek for his segment, and then I'm gonna give the spotlight to Lee. So first off, Derek, you go ahead.
Hey Corey, thanks for letting me collab with you on your Psycho franchise ranking. So here's my ranking of the Psycho franchise, including the Bates Motel TV series. Now, I'm only going to give you my ranking. I'm not going to give you my explanation. So if you want a detailed explanation of why I ranked them the way I did, you're going to have to come on over to my channel and check out my full video. So here's my ranking. Coming in at number 7 is the Psycho remake. Coming in at number 6 is the Bates Motel TV movie from 1987. Coming in at number 5 is Psycho for the Beginning. Coming in at number 4 is Psycho 3. Coming in at number 3 is the Bates Motel TV series. Coming in at number 2 is the original Psycho from 1960. And coming in at number 1 is Psycho 2. Again, Corey, thanks for letting me be on your channel.
All right, thanks, Derek. And now Lee, you go ahead.
Hey, this is Lee from Lieberman Review Stuff. I want to thank Corey from CDR for inviting me to do this, to rank the movies in the Psycho franchise. So real quick, I'm going to go down. I'm ranking by my favorites, not necessarily by best movie, because honestly, I believe the original is the best. So when you listen to my ranking, this is the order in which I prefer them. Coming in at very last place is the 1987 made-for-TV movie Bates Motel. It really has nothing to do with Norman Bates. It has nothing to do with the story, and it's crap. So that's in last place. Next is the 1998 remake with Vince Vaughn as Norman Bates. Once again, I absolutely hate this movie, and that's really all I want to say about it. Next would be Psycho for the Beginning, which was also a TV movie, but I really did like it. And it does have Anthony Perkins in it and Henry Thomas playing a young Norman Bates, but I really like that one a lot. Third is Psycho 3 from 1986. I really enjoy that one. That was the one that Anthony Perkins directed. In second place is the original Psycho from 1960. I do think it's probably the best made movie up here, but as far as my picks for my favorites, it comes in at second place. So number 1 is 1983 Psycho 2, which was written by Tom Holland. It's probably one of the best horror movie sequels ever, and it's one of the most underrated horror movies out there. So that's my ranking of the Psycho franchise. Once again, thank you, Corey, for inviting me to do this. I'm Lee, and I'm done.
Thank you, Lee. Now, they both, like, it's interesting with all our rankings. I hope that we're pretty close to each other in terms of ranking, because as of this recording, I haven't seen the rankings. I'm just going to insert them into the video. But for me, the Psycho rankings, the ranking for me isn't super hard to rank. Like, these movies, there's a couple that I really love, and there's a couple that I like, and a couple that I don't like. So it's weird. It's like every two I like, every two I think are okay, a couple of them I don't like. So it's really weird how this franchise has 2 and 2 of everything, of like, don't like, and think are okay. So my number 6, ranking the franchise, would be the Bates Motel 1987 TV movie. And I'm not talking about the TV show, that's why I said 87 TV movie, because Bates Motel, this came out after Psycho 3, before Psycho 4, because Psycho 4 came out in 1990. This came out on TV and ignored the plot of Psycho 2 and 3, where it's about Bud Cort, his character, apparently became very good friends with Norman in the institution, and Norman dies, and then this guy, Bud Cort's character, goes back to the Bates Motel, and there's a lot of wacky shenanigans happening on this TV movie that was supposed to be a pilot for a really probably horrendous TV show, because this movie was awful. This was one of the worst franchise connected films, because even though this is a TV movie, it does not have any reason to exist. This is horrible. And Lori Petty is in it too, and she's fine. I think that Bud Cort and Lori Petty are fine for what they're given with this crappy TV movie. And my biggest problem is that this movie is not a horror thing. It's like they go to the Bates Motel, they fix it up for renovations, they have all these people just come and like visit and have fun at the Bates Motel while wacky shenanigans and romantic encounters ensue. It doesn't make sense for a Psycho movie. And I know it's a TV movie, but still, it shouldn't do that. Nope. I don't get what their intent was. I'm so glad this didn't make a TV show afterwards. I'm glad that they did the Bates Motel TV series a long time afterward and made it really good. That's one of the best TV shows I've ever seen, horror TV shows. But as the Bates Motel TV movie goes, this is awful. It's horrible. Like, you have to see it to believe it, to see how really bad it is. And I'm excited to see what, I know Lieberman has seen it, and I'm so excited to hear what Derek thinks about it, because I know he will not like it. Like most people don't. I don't know anybody that can defend the Bates Motel TV movie. My number 5 would be the Psycho remake from 1998, starring Vince Vaughn, Anne Heche, Viggo Mortensen, and William H. Macy, and Julianne Moore. Like, if you look at that alone, if you look at the cast in this sounds awesome. All 5 of those actors are great actors, and they're in this movie that they have to replicate the same movie as the original, so this makes it go off really in a bad way. This is literally, like, I've never seen a horror remake like this that is, like, literally shot for shot. And Gus Van Sant, who was on a big winning binge, because, like, he just got off of Good Will Hunting, which was considered a great movie by a lot of people. And then he decided to direct the Psycho remake and make it shot for shot, except the only difference is that it's in color and it's got different actors in it that are good in other things but are not good in this one. Vince Vaughn, you immediately know, as opposed to the original Psycho, you immediately know in this one that Vince Vaughn is immediately crazy. In the original Psycho, you don't know that Norman Bates is crazy, because Anthony Perkins is great in that movie, and in all 4 of them that he was in. But in the first Psycho, Anthony Perkins doesn't come off immediately as this crazy killer, and Vince Vaughn does. Like, you look at him and the way he talks, the way he acts, you know he's a serial killer. It doesn't work in that way, and just all the other actors are great in other things, but they just are playing the same role, so they've got to be relegated to do the same thing, so they don't have freedom to play anything better than what they are. So all 5 of those actors that are really good are wasted in the Psycho remake. It's shot for shot. It's bad, but honestly, I'd be lying if I didn't think that it was a fascinating watch. I do watch this on occasion, because it is interesting to watch just them replicate the whole movie again, even though it's nowhere near as good as the original. But I just think it's so fascinating how much of a what real reasoning they wanted to do that. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I of course put it over the Bates Motel movie, because this one at least feels like a movie, even though it's just a replication of the original, just in color with worse acting from good actors. And then my number 4 would be Psycho 4, The Beginning. And this one was hard to rank between this one and Psycho 3, because Psycho 3 as well I do like. I guess I put this one under Psycho 3. I don't really know a reason. Like, I think that this one is good. I think that Anthony Perkins is good. I think it's great seeing Olivia Hussey as his mother. And I like how, even though Bates Motel, the TV series, did this better, I like how they had this first version of showing Norman's childhood and how abusive his mother was and how crazy she was. And Olivia Hussey does a great job, and she's really a great addition to this film. And I do like the fact that this is a TV movie, but it doesn't feel like a TV movie. It feels theatrical. I think it almost made it theatrical, but then they just took it to TV, I think, because Psycho 3 didn't do well in theaters. So I really like this one. I really like the acting a lot. I really thought that it was thrilling. And also, Henry Thomas, who is Elliot in E.T., plays young Norman Bates as well. Really great casting as well. I really do like all the performances. I like the story overall. I feel like it's just not as good as 3, because 3, I like a couple things more, but this one I think is a solid sequel. Like it ends in a good way too. I like the way that Psycho 4 ended. It felt complete, really complete, because we didn't get any more with Anthony Perkins afterwards, and he died a couple years afterwards, anyways. But I did appreciate that Psycho 4 was a very solid sequel that felt very theatrical for a TV movie. So I did enjoy Psycho 4 the beginning overall. And then my number 3 would be Psycho 3. Now this one is interesting because it's riding off of Psycho 1 and 2, which are fantastic, and of course they're my number 1 and number 2. But Psycho 3, I really, again, love the acting, I love the kills, I love that this story keeps going with like these new characters, but it's not as good as the first two. But I do like the fact that that I'm blanking on the girl's name. The girl who's the nun. I liked her. Maureen is Maureen. I liked Maureen, and because it's similar to Marion, like this girl with short hair is similar to Marion. Norman gains kind of a romance with her, even though it's not the same as like Mary from Psycho 2. Like I like that way better in terms of the romance. But in this one, I didn't mind him and Maureen, but I like the other, like the first two movies with the romance way better than this. Like or the leads better. I liked Norman with Mary or Marion, like in the first two movies, more than Maureen. They have all got M's. I just realized that all three of the girls in the first three Psycho movies start with an M. That's funny. Mary, Maureen, and Marion. That's really weird. But Psycho 3, I do really like the gore in this. I think that it's subtle gore. Like, I mean, well, actually, I take that back. It's not subtle, but it's a slasher from the 80s, and I do like the gore in this. It really is effective, and I do like that story of how Maureen has like this kind of, like, she's this runaway nun, and she tries to kill herself, and then she's got all this religious allegories where, like, Norman goes up as mother goes up to try to kill her, and then she sees Norman and then thinks it's the Virgin Mary, and like she's being saved. And I liked how they've got those religious allegories with Maureen. God, all these names, all the M's are so similar in the first three movies. But Maureen, whenever she sees that, I really like that, and I like how they do kind of form a bond where I did enjoy, even though it doesn't end well, like with most Psycho movies where Maureen is killed. Which is really sad, and it's actually a sad moment where you're just like, because Norman is so close to getting better, and then of course Mother takes over again, and she dies. But I really liked how Norman continues on with this arc of like, he is back with Mother, and he is just tied with her forever. Like, even though she's gone, in his head they're tied together, and I think that's really creepy and really effective. And the gore is good. I like the acting. The only thing I didn't really like much, I really didn't like the Duke guy much. I thought he was, of course his role is to be horrible, and he was, but he really grated on me. So he's one of my negatives. And also, it's interesting, but I also think it's annoying that the writer in this was so so invested in trying to change up the ending from Psycho 2, where it was revealed that Mrs. Spool was Norman's real mother, and then they debunked that in this one, because that guy in the commentary on the Blu-ray said, that's not the way it should go, I'm changing that. So it was kind of arrogant for him to do that. But I mean, it was his own movie, to be fair. It was his own sequel that he was continuing on, but I just thought it was interesting that like they tried so hard to ignore that Mrs. Spool thing from part 2. So it's interesting. It's an interesting sequel. It has things I think are okay about it, but I do like the gore and the characters. I do think this is a solid sequel, and I do enjoy this one overall. And then my number 2, funny enough, would be Psycho 2. One of the most underrated horror movies ever made. Like this along with Exorcist 3 is one of the most underrated horror movies, where Norman Bates, Anthony Perkins' role is incredible in this, but I love the fact that this movie is about Norman, and he doesn't kill anybody until he kills Emma Spool at the end, the only person he kills in the movie, and it's a whodunit, but also it's interpreted before you realize the truth. It's interpreted that Norman's doing it too, but then also he's not there whenever the killings happen in a lot of instances. So I love the fact that this movie really, really keeps you on your toes with how very well done this mystery is. This is a really fantastic mystery, and like the first one, it has a mystery to it, but it's a different mystery where you already know Norman's the killer from the first movie, and this one he's not until the one kill at the end. It's really fascinating that he's not, and it really is interesting with how you look at Lila Loomis, who is so furious that like Norman's coming out of prison or the institution because after all he's done, killed 7 or 8 people. She's furious, and she's so horrible that she sends her daughter Mary, played by Meg Tilly, to have them both pretend to dress up as his mother to try to get him to go insane again, to send him back to the institution, because Lila doesn't want anybody else to get killed, and she's so pissed off because her sister was killed because of him. And of course that ends in a bad way for both Lila and Mary, but I really do like that story, and I really love how they brought back Vera Miles, because she's great in this movie, like the first one, and I love how horrible she is, because 22 years of having her daughter having her sister being killed, and then he's let out of the institution. She gets pissed, but she goes way too far. And I love how Mary, who Meg Tilly plays, is great in this movie. A really sympathetic character, even though she's with Lila, and she makes the bold decision to not go along with Lila towards the end of the movie, and stop, because Norman's a nice guy. He just had all these psychological problems, but they're bringing him back up, rising it back up in him. And I really like how it's not a romance, but I really love that Mary and Norman have such a really fantastic bond. It's really charming and likable, and whenever Mary is killed at the end, it is so sad. It actually gets me. I'm just like, man, I love that character, and it's so sad that she's in that predicament where they shoot her down because they think she's been the killer the whole time, because Norman didn't kill anybody until it's revealed that Mrs. Spool did the whole thing. So I love that. I think that's so awesome that this movie isn't about Norman being the killer, but it's just such a fantastic movie, like fantastically written. I love the characters, I love the acting. The gore is good. It's not super gory, not as gory as Psycho 3, and Psycho 3 isn't even as gory as like a slasher movie standard anyways, but Psycho 2, whenever there's gore, it is incredible. Whenever Lila Loomis gets killed and the knife goes through her mouth, through the back of her neck, is one of the grossest, like, cringiest, like, images in a horror movie. I love that. It gets me. It's just such a great moment. It shocked me the first time I saw that. And I love how it's the reaction of her screaming is the same kind of reaction that Marion Crane had whenever she died in the shower. Like, I love that it's both sisters dying to, not Norman, but to Mrs. Spool. But I love her death scene, and I like the gore a lot. The gore is great. So, and artistic. It's not gore as an over-the-top gore, like from the 80s whenever this was made. I like how this was very subtle gore, except for the knife to the mouth. That wasn't subtle. But I really love Psycho 2. This is one of the best sequels ever. And I reviewed this with a very long review, so I can't say everything about it because I've already reviewed it. But I love Psycho 2, most underrated sequel ever. And then my number 1 would be the original, of course. Nobody's going to really pick... I mean, my friend Derek put Psycho 2 over Psycho 1, but usually people don't. And that's totally fine if people do. Like, everybody's got their own opinion. But Psycho 1, of course, is my number 1 because... And I also want to say this. I think Psycho 1 and 2 are perfect companion pieces. And I think that they both are incredible. I think that they both are equal in my opinion. I think Psycho 1 is perfect in the way of this was the first real slasher movie from like the US slasher movie. Like we had some giallo movies I think in the 60s, but like not any US movie I think that was big like this. Peeping Tom I think came out in 1960 as well, but I don't know if it came out before or after, but this was the big one that started these slashers, because you had before this in horror movies, you had universal monsters basically. You didn't have anything like a human character that kills. And I love how this one is about that. And I think that this movie still, everything about it is incredible. I love both the kills. It's got 2 kills in the movie. But it's so interesting with all the characters. I love everything about this movie. I love how it's in black and white too, because it's like a happy mistake because they didn't have the budget. Alfred Hitchcock wanted to make this movie so bad, but everybody was telling him, you're not going to make this movie because the book like is unadaptable because it's just so grotesque and so horrible. And this is from people in 1960, so it's not really that grotesque, but by today's standards. But Alfred Hitchcock had to sacrifice a lot of his budget, so he made this movie black and white. He got a lot of smaller actors, and I love the fact that everything about this works because of the happy accident. I love how it's in black and white. I think that actually gives this movie an identity. And even though the other ones are in color, I love how this one just it wouldn't be the same thing if it wasn't in black and white. And of course, the shower kill is one of the most memorable kills ever, and I love the Arbogast kill. I think both times the kills happen, the Stinger music still gets me. Whenever he opens up the shower and she screams and it makes the noise of the Stinger, and whenever Arbogast walks up the stairs and it's that up view of like him walking up, and then you hear the noise, but it's faster. The Stinger, it actually literally makes you jump every time when the music happens in the movie with the Stinger. It is one of the most iconic music, of course, ever made, and Bernard Herrmann is just incredible with his score. Like, it truly is one of the best horror scores ever. I love everything about this movie. Love the characters. Love the story. Love how fascinating this movie is and interesting it is for 1960. Because a lot of 1950s to 60s movies like this don't hold up in the same way for me. Like, I actually just watched Peeping Tom for the first time, which I will review soon, and I liked it a lot, but I felt like it was not as interesting. And this one still, no matter if it was even though it was made in 1960, it's still so interesting throughout. Still love everything about Psycho. This is one of the best movies ever made. Love Psycho and Psycho 2, but it was very hard to choose. Of course, Psycho 1 is the classic, but Psycho 2 is the underrated one. So those two should be my number one, but if I had to pick and choose, I'd pick the one that's the classic, the one that I love, everybody loves, everything about it. So that is my ranking for the Psycho franchise, and if you like this, check out my links down below for Twitter, Patreon, Letterboxd, and check out Derek from Derek's Horror Corner channel and Lebo Man. They're both of their channels are awesome content. Go check them out. We're really good friends, and that's it on my franchise ranking. So thank you guys again so much for watching.